Welcome to Not Your Average Breakdown Podcast, the show where we dive into headlines, break down the facts, and explore the stories that impact us all. I'm your host, Claudia, with my co-host, the walking encyclopedia of news, Alex. Hey, Alex.
Hi, Claudia. That was a great introduction.
You're welcome. How are you? Prepping your stretchy pants for Thanksgiving?
Oh, yeah. I am in full mode Joey from Friends. So,
That's exactly how I pictured you.
yeah. Well, we're going out this Thanksgiving. Usually we spend it at your mom's house. But this year, due to high volume of travel and just generally a lot of happening in our lives, we decided not to take the drive up to Connecticut. And so we're going out to Old Town in Alexandria to have dinner at a restaurant. So I have to be presentable, not wear leggings or my Santa pants.
Nothing wrong with leggings. And I think it's quite rude and disrespectful that you are skipping out on our new holiday tradition.
I know, I'm sorry.
Are you?
Next year. I am. I
Mm,
love spending time with you and your family because it's always entertaining.
at least somebody thinks so.
It's not my family, so that's why it's entertaining.
Exactly. Exactly. But I really am excited. But I'm mentally preparing myself for the turkey trot tomorrow, and
You are
which
running
you,
again.
yeah, I'm definitely running again. It's a tradition. So, I mean, I do regret some of my life decisions when I have to wake up so early and then layer all my clothes for the 30-degree weather that I run in, but it's worth it. It's worth it at the end. And last year I convinced your fiance to run it with me, and so that was even super fun. I mean, other than him breaking my cardinal rule of no talking, and he proceeded to chat my ear off the whole way, but
If you know Alan, you know that he cannot help himself.
I know it. He's so great. It's just that was my one rule I told him. I said, we don't talk during this run. Man loves to talk, not when I'm running my turkey trot.
I was pretty disappointed actually last year when you convinced him to run because I have no desire to
No.
ever run on any type of holiday. I'm in the military. I take fitness very seriously, but I do not run turkey trots or Santa runs or whatever the hell you sick people do out there.
Oh man. This is why Al and I get along though, because we are the type of people that will do that. Before we get to our next topic though, I did want to mention that I had a bunch of people reach out about our last Skittles episode to talk about the concerns we raised, and it makes me so happy to know that we are starting these dialogues with our chats.
I know. I actually had a couple of people reach out to me saying that they didn't know what kind of shit is literally in our food. And
Yep.
I sent you a screenshot. My friend Randy said he's going to start growing his own vegetables. And he's like, I'm so done with this. I really received a lot of positive feedback on that Skittles episode. It was really good. I'm glad we did it.
Randy, I feel like you've mentioned him a couple times. I think he's our number one fan right now.
He is, he shares every episode that we record, like with his family, and I just love that. He's my battle buddy. We met on a deployment, and he's just amazing.
He's showing us a lot of love. We appreciate it. We appreciate everyone that's been showing us some sort of engagement. So keep it coming because that's what keeps us motivated to do this and it keeps us just excited to bring it to you. So keep it coming. So now, up for this week, we're going to be talking about the National Association of Realtors, also known as NAR, NAR lawsuit. I want to say that just in case you end up shortening it today. I do want to tell you, Alex, when I saw this headline, I immediately added it to our topic list because before you were blessed with my presence in your life, I started my career out after college in mortgages and then moved to real estate, which I held for about 6 years until I had my second child and then shifted my focus. But I've always been interested in real estate since then. So this topic was something near and dear to me.
Were you licensed in Connecticut?
I was. Yep.
Were you part of the National Association of Realtors?
Yeah, because if you weren't, you get many benefits being deemed a realtor and being part of NAR. You have access to a lot of resources that people who don't wouldn't have access to. So I feel like you are really not bringing the best options to your client if you're not going out there and being a part of any organization that's going to help you be the best realtor you can be.
Were the dues
Yeah,
high?
they were expensive. So it gets really expensive. You have to pay for your licensing. You have to pay for your initial education. You have to pay for continuing ed. You have to pay for access to the multiple listing service. You have to, if you want to do it well, you have to rent your electronic key, and that's a monthly due. So it really adds up, which is another reason why me doing it part-time just wasn't making sense.
Okay. So I ask because that's one of the things that, some people brought up as I was reading the articles about it. What you just said about you being part-time real estate agent also plays a huge role in this lawsuit. So we're going to get to it. You brought this topic to me. You asked me if we can cover it. I want to ask you to tell me, what do you know about this topic?
I don't know much, and since we've started this, I purposefully have not been looking into headlines just so that when we talk about it, I can ask you legitimate questions that come up as if I hadn't heard this before, which I'm hoping I'm representing the people listening. Or even if you do know a little bit about it, maybe you find out a little tidbit that you didn't know before. But I try not to look into it too much. I do know I saw a few things about inflation of sales prices to influence the commission that is getting paid out. But that's where I stopped because I really wanted this to be a natural sort of conversation between you and I.
Okay. So you're spot on. And I don't know if you got that far to see actually how large this lawsuit is. It's not a single lawsuit. And I
Oh.
wasn't aware of that either because I saw headlines when before you brought it up to me. I just saw like there was a lawsuit going on, but I thought it was only one. And since then, there are actually several lawsuits happening simultaneously. And one lawsuit that ended in Missouri ended up being against NAR. And so that lawsuit, because they ended up losing, it opened up the door for like a few other, and there are more to come. They're expecting that there will be more lawsuits just because they lost that one.
Are these all recent that we're talking about here?
All 2023,
Wow. Okay.
and all probably like last month or so. Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to get into the case. There was a class action lawsuit brought up against National Association of Realtors, Keller Williams, Home Services of America, and a couple of other big realtor agencies. The lawsuit, it's a twofold, right? It's antitrust, and it is a anti-competition lawsuit as well. So in Missouri, Illinois, Texas, and South Carolina, for now, there is a class action suit happening, and it's really a couple of things. Like when I initially saw that there is a like inflation of rates and they were engaging in conspiracies and anti-competition, I really thought that was like just one thing. But it turns out that it's like several different things that they were doing. It's like a whole scheme of things. At the beginning, I asked you if you're a part of NAR. I really wanted to know, what is your experience? Because I've seen that they almost like hold the monopoly of the market. And if you're not part of their organization, you really don't have the spot. You don't get the representation. You don't get the access to MLS. There's just so many perks. You don't get the access even to the lockbox. The agents don't contact you. If you choose, you can sign up for us, pay your dues. But really, if you don't, you will not have access, to anything. The lawsuit actually is about four main things. And the first one is commission concealment rules, which NAR prohibited MLS, which is multiple listing services, from disclosing to prospective buyers the amount of commission that the buyer broker will earn if the buyer purchases a home listed on the MLS. You said at the beginning, something about the commission. Buyer broker and the seller broker pretty much dictate how much is the seller going to pay the broker fees, right? When you purchase a house, you don't pay the fees to your broker or your real estate agent that helped you find a house. It's the seller. That comes out of the seller's money. Unspoken rule is that the percentages that the brokers get paid is 5 to 6%. That is
Correct.
standard across, all the states. So that means that one side gets paid 2.5 to 3%, and the other one gets paid 2.5 to 3%. And the problem with that is that now the sellers are saying, well, why are we paying for the buyer's broker?
Can I address that for a second?
Absolutely.
It's been very advantageous for this to happen this way because I come from a mortgage background and we used to pre-approve people for home buying, and the funds were always limited. And if you had funds, then whatever you anticipated for that house always ended up being more. You're paying for an appraisal, you are paying for inspections, you are paying for things that you didn't know or to anticipate, and it's always more than you think it's going to be. So buyers are, and they have their closing costs. So when you roll that in, you are affecting your down payment. You don't want to clean out all of your savings. So this has always been looked at as a positive in this market because having the buyers come to the table with the money has always been a very difficult transaction. So we've always looked at it from my perspective that it was best practice for the seller to do this.
I agree with you. I feel like this is a highly controversial topic because I read both sides, both sides of the argument, and I understand why realtors are doing that. Like you said, buyers, especially first time home buyers,
Mm-hmm.
You have maybe smaller budgets. Like you said, you don't want to clean out your savings account. You have some unexpected costs. I know when I was buying a house, I had unexpected costs that came out during the inspection. That everything, piles up, and it can be, a couple of thousands of dollars that you're in and you're not even closing because there are some costs associated with just inspecting the house and going through the whole process. And then, either side can pull and
Right.
the deal can fall apart. So I definitely agree with your side. But the other side is that because the seller is paying buyer and the seller's broker, there is really no room for competition. There is no room for negotiation. And lawsuit really claimed that this is essentially, it's not an open market. It's preventing from people competing. The real estate agents are not competing anymore. So that's the problem number one, right? Commission concealment rules. Free service rule. This is where it gets tricky, right? So the first one, we're like, okay, well, it might be okay, it might not be okay, but this is really where it gets complicated. They were allowing buyer brokers to mislead buyers into thinking that the buyer broker services are free. The brokers were not disclosing that they were getting paid by the seller. And now we're going into the third item. Commission filter rules and practices. So enabling buyer brokers to filter MLS based on the level of buyer broker commissions. offered and to exclude homes with lower commissions from consideration by potential home buyers. So now this is getting even deeper, right?
So that bothers me because that's not ethical. And I kind of gasped a little bit when you said that because never had I thought when I was representing a buyer to filter by commission. It startled me that you said that because I don't think that way. And it really bothers me.
I know. So I'll tell you, when I was buying my house in Fayetteville, my real estate agent, she was amazing. I loved her. She, disclosed everything to me. And then I built a very good relationship with her. When I was selling my house, I used her again. So she came to my house and, we were going over finances and what do I think I want to get for the house. And so she was telling me, you get to pick how much you want to pay the agents. But she said, if you do anything less than 2.5% to the buyer's agent, they're not going to touch your house. Like, they will not show your house. They will not even bother because they're not going to make a lot of money off of it. She was very honest and disclosed that to me. And I was like, okay, well, the market was really good when I was selling the house. So I was like, we're just going to do 6%, whatever, because I didn't want to deal with that stress where somebody potentially would not even show my house just because I maybe wanted to offer 4%. It's,
Yeah.
it's really concerning because not everybody has that room to wiggle when it comes to money. Buying a house is probably the largest purchase that you can make in your life. Like, you're locking yourself in and potentially 30 years of paying mortgage. So, and the houses are not cheap anymore. We're talking about the median home right now to buy in the United States is over $350,000. We're not buying a house anymore for $60,000 or whatever. 6% on 350 or $400,000, or some markets go even to $1 million or $1.5 million. So when you think about 6% off of that, that's a huge difference from
Yeah, it's
10,
significant.
15. Exactly. All right, so the last one on this list is a lockbox policy, limiting access to lockboxes that provide licensed broker physical access to a home that is for sale to only those real estate brokers who are members of NAR affiliated MLS. We talked about this in the beginning, that if you're not a member of this realtor association, you almost like get shunned from the real estate agent community.
Right. The only way around that is if your broker, so my broker was the best. He was amazing. He would have one in the office for those of us that, maybe didn't have the MLS access. So he kept one for a universal use amongst us all so we could share it. That wasn't best practice because it's first come, first serve. If you had a line of showings for that day and you went to the office and the key wasn't there, you are shit out of luck.
Yeah. I actually didn't know how deep like these, issues actually go and how much controversial they actually are. So as I was digging deeper into this association and why they have so many lawsuits going on, I actually found that Redfin, their online real estate broker, they're similar to like Trulia and Zillow, but I think they can actually like list your house and have their own brokers instead of like outsourcing. Because I've seen a couple of houses in my neighborhood that had Redfin signed. So like they're a full-blown brokerage. They're just online service. I saw that they actually exited the National Association of Realtors and they issued a very concerning letter saying that they do not agree with all the practices that NAR does, that they have issues with their leadership. I don't know if you knew that the CEO and the president of NAR actually had a sexual harassment issue and the president had to step down, and now the CEO is retiring as well. They have their share of issues happening, and so this lawsuit just kind of brings everything to the surface. So Redfin, exited NAR because they were just fed up with how they were running their business, and they issued this open letter, and it was very eye-opening. And they were just saying that NAR is holding this monopoly and they're not ethical, they're abusing their power, and they're not serving the customer. And that's really what comes down to.
It takes one to pave the way, and they're the ones speaking out. So I think that's going to make a big difference in our future.
I think so too. As I mentioned at the beginning, one lawsuit that ended in state of Missouri, NAR lost the class action suit, and under that verdict, the sellers would no longer be required to pay their buyer's agent, and agents will be free to set their own commissions rate, which could be slashed in half or less. So, for example, a home seller with $1 million home can now pay as much as $60,000 in agent commissions, $30,000 to their agent and $30,000 to the buyer agent. This really begs the question if the real estate agents were potentially inflating the market.
Right.
Because the market is, in a state of a chaos currently. They might have prevented some buyers from purchasing cheaper homes, and that's huge. Their impact can actually be huge, because if they were conspiring to keep this 6% and higher rate, then they potentially either didn't show certain houses or didn't even try to sell certain houses if they were offering less money or less commission.
So my concern is this has been the procedure for so long, and it's just been accepted as the procedure. This is what we do, but now it's changing everything. So if you're going to change how much the seller's agent is going to get off a property, how do you even begin to figure out what the buyer's representative should be paid for their service? And does this potentially delay someone from being able to buy a home because now they have to come up with the commission for the representative?
True. So you bring up a good point, and there are some talks that Department of Justice is actually looking to get involved into this case and potentially change the rules of the game. And one of the things that they're trying to do or examine to see if it's possible to do is bundle up your buyer broker fees into your mortgage. Currently, that is not the case, right? When you cannot add that as an additional feature to your mortgage when you're taking it out, because you don't pay the broker. They're looking into how they can potentially add that, so if you need to pay 2-3% to your broker, your agent, then that's what you can do. You can take it on your mortgage, which I understand that they have to look into, okay, how are these people going to get this money? Because so far we didn't have to. If we were buying a house, we were off the hook when it comes to, paying our agents. I feel like it is opening up the doors for more people to get on the market, because now you're going to have more competition between the agents, right? The agents are trying to sell houses. So we're now opening up the market for people who thought that potentially they don't have, enough financial leverage to buy a house. But now, these agents might be luring them into the market, trying to show them some cheaper properties, maybe develop land. So there are now potentially a lot of options for new buyers and buyers who don't have a lot of money.
Okay, I do want to make a comment about that, where you had mentioned the possibility of rolling into their mortgage. The only way they can do that, again, is if the value is there. Because if they're selling something for, I'm just using easy numbers, 100,000, and the buyer can only must put down 10%, and they have their closing costs, the bank is looking for collateral for that money to borrow against. So if the value of the home either comes in lower than 100,000 or at 100,000, they're very limited on what they can do with how much they can borrow.
Yes, but If you're looking at 3% on $100,000, that's not a big add-on to your mortgage. But if you're talking about $1 million home, then that is a big add-on to your mortgage. That can add potentially a couple of hundreds of dollars to your monthly payment. They really have to assess the situation and see how they can help buyers now, and see how is this also going to affect agents, because there's some analysis done. I read this article talking about how potentially 80% of agents might exit the industry because it's not worth it for them anymore. And, their commissions might fall as much as 30% in,
Wow.
first year or two, which is also a huge loss. Real estate is a multi-million dollar industry, and falling by 30%, that is huge. But there was an interesting article, and I told you at the beginning we're going to talk about a part-time agents, and there was an article about this real estate agent from Manhattan, New York, and he was saying that he sort of welcomes this change and shift since the lawsuit ended and NAR lost, because he was saying that he's tired of having part-time agents stealing, full-time agents' jobs. A lot of agents enter the market because they're trying to help out their family. And so he was saying that, if you're a full-time agent, you are not going to struggle to find work. You're just going to have to maybe get creative and see what you can offer to your clients. But, competition is always healthy. He was pretty much saying how this might end up being a really good thing for the industry and for the customers as well, because as I said, it's going to welcome that competition, and it's going to be more lucrative for equally buyers and sellers, but also the agents.
Yeah, this is just blowing the top off of this. I mean, how it's been traditionally done is just, it can't remain the same at this point because of these lawsuits, which is really, it's got my wheels turning about what this means about how it's going to get done moving forward.
So I can tell you that the lawsuit that ended, the court said that
This is the Mississippi lawsuit?
Missouri, yes.
Missouri, sorry.
Home sellers were asking for $1.7 billion in damages, and they got it. However, the court can actually triple. NAR might actually be paying $6 billion in damages. The number is significant because not only that they have to pay it, but it's the fact that they didn't settle, because some of the defendants, like I mentioned, it was not just NAR, it was Keller Williams and Remax and Home Services of America. Some of the defendants actually settled before going to court, and they got let off the hook for fraction of what NAR got charged with. Century 21 Real Estate, Coldwell Banker, and Sotheby's, they are paying $83.5 million in damages. So compare that to $1.78 billion, that is a huge difference.
Wow.
And we don't stop there. Because NAR lost in court in this one state, now there are more lawsuits happening, right? They already had an ongoing lawsuit in Illinois, which is their home state. There is another lawsuit in Texas. And a few days ago, South Carolina filed a lawsuit. And I read an article that Florida is also preparing to potentially open up a lawsuit. The fact that they didn't settle, now it's opening up,
The floodgates.
Exactly. It's like doors to hell just opened, because every state pretty much just got an invite to sue them. So NAR, said that they're going to try to appeal and that this is not over, even though this might take a few years to, actually pay out and see how this is going to play out. Is DOJ going to get involved? Are they going to try to make changes on a national level? Is this just going to stay on a state level and each state is going to just sue them. We don't know yet, but they're appealing, and we know that this is not going to be fast process because they have a lot of money and they're trying not to lose that money. And if they keep losing in different states, that $1.7 billion might turn into $10 billion. So they understand the volume of their problem.
I mean, that's not all they have to worry about. If I were them, I would be worried about my existence at this point because this has provoked so many questions, and I'm sure much investigation on them and whether it's ethical that they run the way they run and if they can run any other way.
You want to hear something crazy? So, as I was doing this research, I was, there's a lot of information about them, their lawsuits, and as I mentioned, sexual harassment suits, and like all these scandals and stuff. But there was really not a lot of information about the organization itself. I was like, are they a union? Are they like what is actually, what's their deal? They're a nonprofit organization. And
What?
that just blew my mind more than anything that I told you in the last, 30 or so minutes. The fact that they're a nonprofit organization and their CEO makes millions of dollars. I saw somewhere that he makes between $3 and $5 million a year. And I'm like, for a nonprofit organization that is charging all these dues and
Yes.
engaging in potential antitrust issues, and it was mind boggling. They're a non-profit organization.
Yeah, I feel like the hammer is going to be coming down on them.
I feel like they need some restructuring. They got too big. They're holding a huge real estate monopoly, and it's almost like a cult. If you're not with them, you're against them. Culture has to change. It really
Yeah,
is the culture.
they are cocky as hell too. I mean, when you deal with realtors, whew.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a friend who is he's a real estate agent here in DMV area, and he came out with his perfume.
What?
I know. So, but he's all that. He is like a male version of Selling Sunsets around here. And
Okay.
I know that's not the reality of the industry, all the glamour and, shootings and all this, fun stuff. But there is that side of, that business. If you're selling in this like high market areas, such as, Washington, D.C. and surrounding states, then you get to do that. And, he has his own cologne. And I think it's actually called the Realtor or something. And
You got to be flashy, baby.
yes, you do. We have it actually. We got a sample, so I will make sure I bring it to you. So
Hook a hook a sister up.
the view of real estate is really not, Selling Sunsets or HGTV, but I think a lot of us think that that's what it is. That they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but actually their median salary is $60,000. And that's nothing.
So, Alex, with this, action is not going to be immediate, but things are in the works.
Yes, it's probably going to take a couple of years until we get a definite decision either from NAR or Department of Justice if they do get involved into this case and try to make a change on a national level versus a state level.
I imagine that realtors everywhere, whether you're part-time or full-time, are really anxious about this because this is going to lead to a lot of change for them.
Yeah, it's we talked about a few episodes ago, we talked about AI and how that is changing the industry, and now we have this change coming to the real estate industry as well. So I feel like there is a shift in the entire workforce. and it might be driven, not solely by AI and advanced technology, but also it's almost like social justice.
Mhm.
People are fed up with the way that the system works. One of the worst things that, and I'm sure you probably heard it since you've been working, is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I just hate that term, because it makes you almost like feel stagnant and that you're supposed to fall into these old ways of doing things. And this is, a prime example where people saw a chance to make a change and they went for it and they got a momentum and they won this one lawsuit, and now there's like 5 other ones pending, and this just took everybody by surprise, but it's happening. Like it's making a change. And it got such a huge momentum that it got attention from Department of Justice, and that's huge because not every case gets that type of attention. DOJ doesn't really love to get involved into cases that can be solved on a state level, but since this is being brought up by so many states now and it's going to keep happening, I feel like the government is realizing that this is becoming a huge problem.
I am so invested in this. I want to know.
I am too. I forgot to tell you at the beginning, I don't know if we ever talked about this, but I actually almost became a real estate agent.
When?
So I took the test and everything. I went to school, and I was about to take the Connecticut state test, and then I decided to quit my job. Before I came to the club where you and me met, I was working at this residential building and I was eyeing a position of a real estate agent I would have been renting apartments in the building that I was working at, and I needed a real estate agent license, so the company was paying for it. I thought it was very interesting. I learned a lot, and it was like my first introduction to business law. Luckily, I realized that I was really not happy at that job, and so I quit and ended up at the club, and consequently I ended up back in school and got a different degree, and so it all sort of worked out. But I really thought I wanted to be a real estate agent until I realized that I didn't.
Well, I'm just glad you clarified the time frame for this, because if you were going to real estate school now, presently, while you're doing everything that you do, I'd report you for being cloning yourself, because there's no possible way that you would put that with everything else that you do. So thank you for clarifying. But yeah, I mean, you barely missed it. You barely missed it. We could have had that in common too. We often say that Alex has many a personality, and she's got a picture and a look for each one of them and a
Listen,
name.
I went through phases, okay? I'm not ashamed of that. I experimented.
I don't know what goes on in Serbia, but it is really fucking interesting. Well, is that all you have for us tonight, Alex?
That is all I have, unless you have any other questions about this
No,
insane
no.
case.
You brought the heat. You told me when we were texting this weekend that this was a spicy story, and you delivered. So thank you for that. Thank you for anyone that's listening. We hoped you gained some valuable insights from this conversation as well. And if you've been along with us for this entire ride, all 6 episodes, we're at 6 now, believe it or not, we so appreciate you. So if you have thoughts to share or questions burning in your mind, we want to hear from you. So email us at nyabpodcast@gmail.com.
And we're also on Instagram, NYAB Podcast, and we're on TikTok, the same handle,
Woo!
NYAB Podcast. And so add us,
Add
comment,
us.
share. We would love to hear from you.
So
Yes.
thanks again. Thank you, Alex. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week. And happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Bye.
Bye.